book opens with the spy Verity, having been captured and tortured for weeks by the local Gestapo, or known as the Nazi police. She's a broken woman, and in exchange for no more torture, she has agreed to give the Germans information about British spy operations and their wireless codes. As she as she writes her story, though, you get the feeling that she's not telling them everything. In fact, she may not be telling them the truth at all. Verity is playing a very dangerous game with her jailers, but more with von Linden. Halfway through the book, Maddie, Verity's pilot, begins to tell her own story of life in France. First of all, though, Verity, part 1 of the book is told by Julie or Verity's perspective, or side of the story, and then part 2 is Maddie's story. After their plane crash landed, Verity and Maddie parted ways. Maddie must try and get home to England, all the while wondering if Verity is okay. This is a harrowing tale of uncommon bravery, unforgettable friendship, and ordinary girls doing extraordinary things in a time of war. Both characters met and worked with the French resistance. The French resistance played a vital part in aiding the Allies to success in Western Europe. Throughout those, they actually helped especially leading up to D-Day in June 1944. The French resistance supplied the Allies with the vital intelligence reports, as well as doing a huge amount of work to disrupt the German supply and communication lines within France. The resistance movement developed to provide the Allies with intelligence, attack the Germans when possible to assist the escape of Allied airmen. The French resistance movement is an umbrella term which covered numerous anti-German resistance movements that were based within France. There were resistance movements that took direct orders from the Special Operations Executive. There was the communist resistance groups loyal to de Gaulle, regional resistance movements that wanted independence, and etc. In the north, the target was simply the Germans, while in the south, the Vichy government was a target, as well as the Germans. Here's more info on the French resistance. Since the French resistance played a vital part in aiding the Allies to success in Western Europe, and also to D-Day in June 1944, the surrender of France in June 1940 was a major blow to many French people in terms of their pride. Many believed that the government had let the people down. The creation of a Nazi-approved government, primarily in the south of the country, was further proof that politicians had let down France. I believe that they were scared that they didn't want to lose their lives, so most likely others would have done the same, but the resistance movement developed to provide the Allies with intelligence. So it was basically a big group of spies just helping Allies and attack the Germans when possible and assist the escape of Allied airmen. On June 18, 1940, Charles de Gaulle addressed the people of France from London. He called on the French people to continue the fight against the Germans. This message hit them hard in occupied France, but it was less received in France. Even though of what many thought of the government, the area they controlled was ran by French people. So the French resistance movement is, like I said earlier, is an umbrella term which covered numerous anti-German movements. Well, in May 1941, the first SOE agent was dropped in northern France to assist the work of the resistance that would help them, and that because of that, the particular political complexities of France, the resistance movement got off to a difficult start there. However, June of 1941, the resistance movement had become more organized and its work against the Germans increased. On June 22nd, 1941, all communist groups in France joined forces to create one group. This simply was increased in on November 11th, 1942, the German forces occupied the whole of France. This meant that the whole country was occupied, and attitude of the North quickly transferred itself to the South. The relationship between Britain and the French resistance movement was vital. They supplied the French with equipment and trained agents. There were also backup in June 18th, 1940. Charles de Gaulle addressed the people of France from London. He called on the French people to continue the fight against the Germans. So he was kind of like a big supporter with he really wanted to help like a kind of messenger and helper, supporter. He called on the French people to continue the fight against the Germans, and it helped them become, stronger. And the German attack Russia led to many French communists joining the resistance group. Politics look a back step, and French communists gained a reputation for being aggressive and successful resistance fighters. Many French people joined as a support for the government quickly waned. Many in the South were angered by labor service that had been brought in, but the treatment or the attitude towards Jews was a major cause of resentment towards the government, and many joined the resistance as a meaning of fighting against a policy that the vast majority found abhorrent. So basically, just basically increasing every time. It's just growing bigger and bigger. And that, Maddie was also Jew and an Englishman. So, Julie, when she switched identities, so that's why she Maddie had Julie's identity, Catherine, and then Julie just wanted to knew that Maddie wouldn't survive the torture and stuff, so she took it out on herself, and saved Maddie's life. And that the French resistance met Julie and Maddie, and Julie was captured, but she thought Maddie was killed because of the fire of her plane, but actually it was the resistance helping out to fake her death, and that they had to kill a Nazi messenger or spy to. Yeah, they had to kill him, and they just put him in the fire on the body. And I think Julie thought it was Maddie who actually died. Back to the connection of French resistance. By the end of 1942, de Gaulle became head of the Comité Français de Libération Nationale, which headed all resistant movements in France. As a result of this greater organizational security, the resistance became more effective in 1943. Attacks on the French rail system increased greatly. Between January and June 1943, there were 130 acts of sabotage against rail lines each month. By September 1943, this had increased to 530. That's a big number, so that's a great increase in that. The disruption of the Germans' ability to move equipment was massive. By 1944, it is estimated that there were 100,000 members of the various resistance movements that existed in France. Just 1 year earlier, there were just 40,000 members. By the spring of 1944, there were 60 intelligence cells whose task was solely to collect intelligence as opposed to carry out acts of sabotage. In the build-up of D-Day, the intelligence they gathered was vital. In May 1944 alone, they sent 3,000 written reports to the Allies and 700 wireless reports. Between April and May, the resistance destroyed 1,800 railway engines. When this figure is added to the 2,400 destroyed by Allied bombers, it is easy to understand why the Germans had such difficulty transporting equipment